Adina's favorite chapter of Tanya is actually coming up in just a little bit. It's chapter 15. 15 is an incredible chapter. We have the foundation already from chapter 12, clarifying, analyzing, empowering us on what the Beinoni is. But soon will come along chapter 15 that will really put it all together and explain how, in truth, the Beinoni has a one-up over the tzaddik. So we all know that the tzaddik is almost inaccessible. We could have a tzaddik moment. We're going to learn this week in chapter 13. But ultimately, the tzaddik is a much higher level. Chapter 15 will come and explain to us how, in truth, the Beinoni is not just an incredible level to be on, but it actually has a one-up over a tzaddik level. So we'll get to there hopefully in 2 weeks. We're trying to finish chapter 13 and then chapter 14, which let's just see, turning the pages. Chapter 14 I don't think is long. Right, chapter 14, maybe it is. Okay, yeah. All right, so we have to try to cover chapter 13 today and chapter 14 next week, God willing, and then we'll be on chapter 15. Just by way of I already gave an introduction to chapter 13 at a previous week, last week, and of course you could listen to the recording and get a better clarity in case you missed it. But just one last thought that I don't think I've shared before. Adina and I are giving a lot of classes now during the week. A Pirkei Avot class we just finished, a prayer class. I'm giving a Yiddish class and a Tanya class, of course, and a Hebrew reading course and an advanced Hebrew reading course and different classes. And we have more things coming up over the next few weeks that we're still planning. But ultimately, we know that a way of a bond, when a person makes a union with another person, it's not only in a spousal relationship. Friends, acquaintances also have interactions, also have ways of communication and ways of connection. But you can't compare. There are different ways to communicate and different ways of uniting. For example, when people bond over a certain taste, let's say they both like French fries, or they both like steak medium rare, and they're like, hey, I like it that way also. There's a certain connection. We have a similar taste. We have a similar enjoyment to food. That's a pretty shallow level of connecting. That could work, but there's a deeper level of union between people. And take, for example, the connection that is made between people over music. That's a much more classy, deep style of connecting. And we have some people on our call that appreciate music. Isabel, I'm sure you could attest to different styles of music and appreciating. If I appreciate a certain style of music and you appreciate that same style, we could converse and we could connect over the similar style. And even if we're just sitting next to each other, listening to the symphony or whatever, we feel close because we're appreciating the same music that we know we both delight in, we both appreciate it. But still, that's a level of union that is connecting the two people higher, deeper than taste. But still, there's depth beyond that. Take, for example, a much deeper style is a union that takes place through wisdom. When I'm understanding something and it clicks in your mind also, I'm explaining it and you understand it, or you're explaining, and then finally, it makes sense to me. We just clicked on a very deep level. It's our minds connecting, and that's actually a much more deep way of connecting over taste, over dance, and over music even. It's much more in depth. I hope that's making sense. And I see that just now over different classes, even if we're distanced in terms of a screen, but still minds could connect on a deeper level than touch or dance or taste, etc. But the Tanya is teaching us, this is already from chapter 5 of Tanya, and chapter 4, that the greatest union of a Jew, of a neshama, of a soul, could have with God is actually when we perform a mitzvah, and even more when we study Torah. When we study Torah, our minds become surrounded by God's wisdom, and God's wisdom comes surrounded in our mind. It's a full enmeshed union that, in the Alter Rebbe's words, you can't even describe that type of union with anything in our world. There's no similar comparison, no analogy that could explain it. So that takes place when we perform a mitzvah, and even more when we study Torah, we connect our soul with with God on a level that is beyond imagination. And it's a very deep concept. The idea that a bond of souls between each other when they study Torah together and when they pray together, and even more, the bond of a soul with God, which is our soul is a piece of God, literally. The union that is being described is just incredible. So now where we're up to, understanding that union, what I wanted to clarify a little bit is the Beinoni feels that, I don't know if the word is euphoric moment at the time of prayer. When the Beinoni prays, it's an oasis. It's a spiritual comfort zone. You know, when you could go to all the hotels in the world and it's beautiful, but the fact is when you come home, it's like, it could be half the size. No one made your bed like the housekeepers do in the hotels, but it's yours. It's your bar of soap. It's not those fancy hotel ones. It's yours. It's everything belongs to you. It's just a certain comfort zone. So the soul, when he's davening, or she is davening, praying, the comfort level of the soul is it's at home. It's feeling back to itself. It's feeling expressed. It's feeling remembered. It's feeling comforted. So the Beinoni loves that moment, and it knows that it's not going to last. It knows that it's going to be running out to world. So the Beinoni tries to keep in that moment, and not remaining in prayer time, but keeping that inspiration alive. So we've discussed all that before, but the point is over here, the Beinoni, Rabbah confused himself for a Beinoni, because Rabbah felt, I feel good. My soul is on fire. I'm comfortable, but it's because I'm praying all day, because I'm involved in Torah study all day. So yeah, my soul is on fire. But what would happen if my soul would be removed from that fire for a little bit? What would I feel? And where will my mind take me? So even though Rabbah was wrong for thinking that, there was a mistake. But you could see where he was coming from to mistaken himself to be called the Beinoni, which was the question we had in the first chapter. How could Rabbah, one of the greatest sages to ever live, consider himself a Beinoni? So, which is simply translated just as an average guy. So now we understand that a Beinoni is a lot deeper. It's someone who is striving to not necessarily be perfect, but to do perfect. And he's working on his mind, on his thought, his speech, and his action. And it's doable, and he's resoluting, he's taken a firm commitment, and he's achieving it. And it's impossible in his state of mind now to ever falter in his action, in his speech, or even letting his thoughts wander to inappropriate things. But he's always in a struggle. And therefore, anytime there's something that's going to come up in his mind, he's going to push it away with his two hands, push it away. And I think I explained it in my Hebrew reading course. I don't think I explained it here. The idea, I think I actually got it from here, so I should actually tell that over here. Let me just find the wording. At the same time, drink a little coffee, and I'm sure it'll be a lot clearer. The expression we had in chapter 13, I don't know if we got to it yet, or if I've just studied it and it'll come to us as we learn it together. But one of the expressions we're going to get to is the Beinoni, whenever an inappropriate thought comes up from his impulse, which means from his inner conscious, from his mind, from his inner soul, to be thought about, and it's trying to lay itself out there to the rest of the thought, speech, and action to take over and to fantasize on, the Beinoni pushes it away with his two hands. And it's actually a very important wording, pushes away with two hands. Because we all know when a person, not all of us know this specific example, but when a person is struggling with something, if someone, for example, is struggling with an addiction to cigarettes, if they, with one hand, they throw away the pack, but with the other hand, they're catching it and they're going to keep it in their back pocket just in case the night comes and they can't fall asleep, or whatever urge they have to smoke. They didn't really quit yet because they still have it hiding in their left hand just in case. So the idea of pushing something away with both your hands is the idea that it's a firm resolution, commitment, hachlata, that I'm taking not to ever trespass that domain again. So it's like if a person is involved, God forbid, in an inappropriate relationship, and they know they can't go there, they can't be in that place, whatever it is. If they're going to hover around that house or that building or wherever they know they should not be, they're not making a firm commitment to not be involved in such things, because they're allowing themselves the imagination, the going back, pushing away with two of your hands, which is an expression either we've had just last week or we're going to have this week, is the idea of making a firm commitment. Just to appreciate in the Hebrew, some of you may have heard this in my Hebrew reading class, or maybe even in my prayer class, but the Hebrew word for yad, which is a hand, al netilat yadayim, which means hands, is made up of two Hebrew letters, a yud and a daled. Together it makes the word yad, which is a hand. A yud and a daled, numerology-wise, in numbers, it actually equals the number 14, because yud is the 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, daled is the 4th letter. Together that equals 14. When you put 14 times 2, which means when you put your two hands together, you actually come up with the word koach, which means strength, like yasher koach. Koach means strength. And when you put your two hands together, then you allow yourself true inner strength. And we all know that if you're doing something, but doing it with one hand and doing something else with the other hand, it's not getting done fully. When you put your strength to something, meaning you're telling your animal soul, I don't want this. This is not for me. This is inappropriate for me. It gives an entirely new status that this is not me. Actually, the best way to educate, not the best, there's many ways of how to educate a child. In fact, Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, the wisest of men, says, Chanoch lenar al pi darko, which means educate the child on their path, on his or her path, which means there's not one size fits all in education. Every child has their path that you have to guide them on. It's not, oh, they're doing it this way, put them back to the path that was already decided for them. Every child has their path, has their unique character and style and personality. But having said that, an incredible way of educating, it's actually a Yiddish expression, is the words, when a child does something inappropriate, you don't rebuke them just with rebuke. You actually rebuke them by showing them how great they are. And in Yiddish, it's actually two words. Some of you may be familiar with this Yiddish expression. Maybe your grandparents told it to you when you got involved in things that you shouldn't have. In Yiddish, the expression is es passt nicht, which means it's unbecoming of you to be doing such a thing, which means you're so much better than that. I know so much more that you can be doing. Es passt nicht. It doesn't fit you. That's the right word. It's unbefitting, unbecoming of you. In Hebrew, it's actually down to one word. A friend of mine's father, who's a Chabad rabbi in Los Angeles, his name is Rabbi Schusterman, Gershon Schusterman. And he has children who are Chabads all across the world, from Maryland and Georgia to the South Peninsula here, all the way to countries across the globe. But anyway, their father, his name is Rabbi Schusterman, Gershon Schusterman. When he was a young bacher, a young yeshiva boy in Brooklyn, he was called in by the administrator of the school that told him that the Rebbe has a message for you. The Rebbe was looking over all the marks of the tests, and he saw your mark. And when he saw your mark, he was like, Hayatachin, which is a Hebrew word, which means, how could it be? You're so much better than that. I know you could do so much better. So back to the point, I'm sorry, I could easily sidetracked it, but the point back to the Tanya here is that the Beinani knows the power and potential that it has, that she has. The Tanya reveals that to us. And that's the beauty of Tanya. It's so exciting from chapter 2, where we have that unleashed potential. It's inside of us. And all you have to do is recognize it, allow it to shine. Torah and mitzvahs unite our soul to the deepest levels that allows our soul to shine and to get its nutrients, to get its vitamins that it needs. So it realizes the incredible power and potential that it is capable of. Okay, so someone could correct me if I am wrong, but I think we got up to the second or third page in chapter 13. Does it make sense that we're on page 155? Does that sound right? And Maddie, it would be helpful for you if I share and for Isabel as well. Maybe I'll share the text on the screen. So while I have a book, but it will be helpful for those that want to follow along. Would that be helpful for anyone?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. So just give me around 30 seconds to remember how to unlock this technology here. It is called Kindle. So let me just get my Kindle and then I'll share the screen.
I have both the book and I have the Kindle.
Okay.
For everybody, I think the Kindle's pretty inexpensive, $10 or $15. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as good Jews, we like to save. So if this could save anyone that I have it on my screen, I'm happy to be of service. So I'll pull it up. Here it is.
Can now appreciate the Talmud's precise choice of wording that the Bianani has two internal judges.
Okay, I don't know. Were you guys able to hear that? Hey, you guys don't even need me. I think the Kindle could talk for you. All right, let me just get back to there for a second. That was pretty cool. Okay, we are back. So chapter 13, page 155 in your paper book, or middle of the screen in the other book, in the Kindle book. The above discussion, this is section 2, the Beinani's failure to transform. The above discussion about the default unenlightened level of the Beinani will now help us answer a question posed at the beginning of the Tanya. The Tanya had questioned the oath that according to the Talmud, the soul is made to swear prenatally, which means before it's born, even if the entire world tells you, you are a tzaddik, you should consider yourself like a Rasha. This was problematic, since it seemed to contradict the Mishnah's advice. Don't consider yourself to be a Rasha. So in one place the Talmud says, consider yourself like a Rasha. Other places in the Mishnah, also part of the Talmud, it says, don't consider yourself to be a Rasha. Make up your mind, dear Torah. So the Tanya will now offer an answer to this question through a close reading of the Talmud's words. The oath does not, in fact, state that you must consider yourself an actual Rasha. Look at this precise wording. But rather, you should consider yourself like a Rasha. In Hebrew, the word was ke Rasha. The extra kaf, which makes the K sound ke, doesn't mean a Rasha. It means like a Rasha. Consider yourself like a Rasha. Who is like a Rasha? This term, the Tanya will argue, refers to a Beinani. Okay, so let's understand that a little clearer. But since the evil of the animal soul in the left chamber of the Beinani's heart retains its inner strength, right? The animal soul is still right there on the Beinani side, waiting for it after prayer to get back at it. And it is still tempted to desire every worldly pleasure, and its evil was not voided by dilution from an overwhelming amount of good, which is the hallmark of a tzaddik, right? The tzaddik is always on that wave. He has enough fuel to warm up his house. It's right there for him. The Beinani, it's always being tempted. There's evil still inside. It's not diluted. It's not voided by the good. And even its voice was not displaced permanently at all, only temporarily. During prayer and study, which we learned before, like around 10 pages ago in chapter 12, rather, its evil remains in full force. And it just lacks the control and dominance to spread its influence over the body's parts. So there's evil inside the Beinani. It's called this animal soul that has selfish wants, egotistical and ambitions, and jealousy and anger. But it's just dormant inside of the animal soul, and it's giving rise, it's giving its impulses, but it doesn't have the control to get the driver's seat, to get the keys to the car, like we gave examples in chapter 9, to get control over the body. And even that is not due to its own merits, but because the blessed one, Holy One, which is God, stands at the right hand of the poor person and assists him by illuminating his divine soul. Therefore, since the Beinani's evil remains as strong as ever, he's referred to by the Talmud as like a Russia, which is Kerusha. So it's beautiful where when we learn this Talmud, it just seems, oh, you should consider yourself a Russia. Over here, the Alter Rebbe is saying the wording is consider yourself like a Russia, which means never be so confident in yourself that you are fine with no matter what happens because I'm safe. And I think Shira had a nice expression for it last week. Never be overly confident or something like that. The Beinoni is like a Russia because the evil in the left chamber of the Beinoni's heart retains its innate strength and has not been voided or displaced, which may result in negative thoughts popping into his head. B, even the Beinoni's external mastery is essentially due to divine assistance, without which he would revert to being a Russia. So if you want to know where we have that strength, maybe I'm talking too fast. If you want to know where do we have this strength that a Beinoni is able to withstand, to stand strong, and to, on external level, win and not give in to any temptations with his or her thought, speech, and action, is because of divine assistance. It's a very powerful idea that I think is being introduced now in the Tanya for the first time, that God is rooting for us. God is our cheerleader, saying, you can do this, and I've got your back, and I'm here to support you throughout. A beautiful wording from King Solomon's writings is God, maybe I mentioned here before, I talk to a computer so many times, I don't know what I say to who anymore, but God says these beautiful words in Hebrew. God says, Piskali kechude shel machat, v'ani eftach lachem kepiskoi shel ulam. You open up just a little bit, the size of the eye of a needle. I'll do the rest, God says. I'll open up for you the gates of the temple's inner chambers, which was massive. But God says, it's got to start with you. You start, I'll support you. But God wants to see the effort coming from us. And we see that for sure with our children. When our children are ready to commit to do something, we want to help them, but we want it to come from them. Because otherwise we're just spoiling them and we're doing it for them. We want them to do it. Of course, they may not be able to do it on their own. But like when our kids are learning to tie their shoes, just as a petty example, we don't always want to tie it for them because then they're never going to learn. Even if they're not doing it right, I'm there to assist you. But just start the process. Show that you could do it. And now I'm going to help you and make the right bow and knot. But you work on it. And God says the same. I'm going to assist you in the process and support you, but it's got to start with you, with the Beinoni. Okay, we turn the page. So in the Kindle at least. So let me just find it here. Cool. So it turns out that the character of the Beinoni is predominantly like a Russia, both inside and out. So that's something that we're coming to in this chapter, that the Beinoni is kind of like a Russia. What does that mean? So let's see further. This explains the teaching of our sages of the blessed memory cited in chapter 1. Even if the entire world tells you, you are a tzaddik, you're a good guy, you're righteous, which means not just a tzaddik in the descriptive way, the way we use it in court, you're innocent and you're nice. Tzaddik over here means you're on top of the world. Still, you should consider yourself like a Russia. The sages were not suggesting that after achieving external mastery over the garments of thought, speech, and action, you ought to look at yourself as an actual Russia. That's not a good thing. Don't look at yourself like an actual Russia, since this is simply not true. And it violates the mission's advice. Don't consider yourself to be a Russia. Rather, what the sages meant to say was, if the entire world tells you you are a tzaddik, you should consider yourself to be like a Russia, i.e., which means, meaning to say, I think it's Latin or Roman for it est, which means, meaning to say, be like yourself, be a Beinoni. Like a Russia means a Beinoni and a Russia are not that far apart in terms of they both have evil inside them. They both have selfish, negative wants. But the difference is that the Beinoni controls himself, has self-mastery, knows that's not what he should be doing. Yeah, thank you. Is to stay humble, Maddie. So she was asking, did the Rebbe consider himself Kirusha? So, good question. I don't think so, because there's another book that never made it to our hands called this is called the Book of the Beinoni. there's another book called the Book of the Tzaddik. So the Tzaddik, it's like once a person is a Tzaddik, they know it. And at that point, they shouldn't consider themselves like a Rasha, meaning they don't have that concern of being in certain situations where they have a temptation. But either you know it, or you're told that by another tzaddik. There's even a story, I don't remember all the details, but let me just look at another comment. The Yetzer Hara is still active in the Beinoni, exactly. The Yetzer Hara is still active in the Beinoni, which is not true by the Rebbe and the tzaddik, right? So I think that's, Robin, you're answering the question. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is not present. So this is just an incredible idea. There's even a story of I think it was by the Maggid of Mezrich, who was a big giant of Torah, but I may be off, either him or one of the other Hasidic rabbis at the time. Let me just unshare for a second to share the story. I would love anyone's feedback on this. Thank you all for joining. Hi, Yael. Thank you for joining. I hope you're able to catch some of what we're learning. It's fun stuff. Have we met before, Yael? Oh, let me see. No? Okay. I'm just going to mute you for a second. I would love to hear. Oh, here. I can't hear you, but in case, I would love to hear more of where you're from and how you heard of this. So there's a story of a Hasidic Rebbe. I think it was the second Hasidic Rebbe, the successor of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. And one of his disciples was striving to work on themselves to be better and took huge strides. And at a certain point, his teacher called him in and says, from here on, your job, your process is not that of a Beinoni anymore. It's that of a tzaddik. Meaning he was told when his time has come to change gears and that he could take the next step. But it's something that either a tzaddik himself identifies it within you and tells you, or you realize it on your own. But trust me, when you get to that point, I think you'll feel it. You'll know it when you don't have that evil inclination having selfish wants. And it's definitely a high level. And for most of us, it's not even that it's not unattainable. It's not even our life's mission to get rid of an evil. Our life's mission is to struggle with it and overcome it. And we'll see in chapter 15 how that actually brings out our greatest colors. In chapter 15, you'll see it's really, really an incredible chapter. Hopefully we'll get there in good health very soon. All right, I'll continue sharing my screen. I hope that story was clear. Just for reference sake to answer Shira's question. Okay, that's not you guys. Okay. So again, in chapter 1, the Tanya says, even if the whole world is saying you're a tzaddik, consider yourself like a Rasha. And the simple understanding, not simple, the deeper understanding, the way we're learning it is, don't consider yourself a Rasha. That's dangerous. That's a slippery slope. If you consider yourself to be a bad guy, it's going to lead you to depression. It's going to lead you to melancholy. It's going to lead you to feeling heavy and unambitious. Is that a word? Unambitious and lazy and uninterested because you look down at yourself. That's not the point. That's not what that's forbidden to do. But don't be overly confident. Be like a Rasha. Realize that you're a Beinoni. And realize you have the strength to attain to that high in Hebrew darga, but in English high level of a Beinoni. But it takes work. It takes work. Okay, so let's see that a little more. I'm just going to widen the screen, maybe make it easier. People, we're in the middle of on the Kindle, we're in the middle of the page. If you're looking inside your book, we're towards the bottom of 156. People perceive only external behavior and not inner refinement. So they could not possibly know if you are a tzaddik or not. Even you don't know whether you're refined, your inner evil. Because its failure to surface doesn't mean it's not there, right? Just because something is not in front of you doesn't mean it doesn't mean you're free. You still have to be careful. Do not believe the world's opinion you are a tzaddik. And this would mean that the evil in you has been voided by the good. And this is very unlikely to be true, since this is the level of a tzaddik, which is a rare phenomenon, like we learned in chapter 10. Rather, in your eyes, you should look at yourself as if the deep core of evil remains with its full inborn strength in your heart's left chamber. and it has not budged or departed from you whatsoever. There's a practical lesson here in the book. I don't see it in the Kindle edition. So I'm just going to pause there. Robin, if you have the book in front of you, would you like to read that practical lesson on the right bar of 156?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Hold on a sec. I want to shut off my fan. Even if you achieve an external and internal self-mastery, never sinning or even desiring to sin, you cannot be sure that you are a tzaddik. You may just be a Benoni whose evil is dormant. Your external behavior is in your complete control. Even your negative thoughts can be replaced with good ones, but your deep emotional core is resistant to change.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so back inside, toward the top of the Kindle page, and a third of the way down on 157 if you're looking inside the paper book. If a Beinoni would look at himself as a tzaddik, he would imagine that his battle with evil is over. So he might lower his guard and relax to some extent. Therefore, the sages stressed that a Beinoni is essentially like a Rasha, in whom the Yetzer Hara is as strong as ever in the heart. With such strong negative energy lurking below the surface, it would be a grave error for the Beinoni to relax his vigil for even a moment. You can't let your guard down. And let's just see what Maddie's saying. Oh, wow. Thank you, Yael. I'm looking now. You're from Santa Maria. I'm assuming that's in California, but I don't even know where Santa Maria is. I'm assuming there is, but thank you very much for joining. And I would love to stay in touch with you so I can keep you updated and more learning opportunities. Thank you, Yael. It sounds like one cannot call themselves a tzaddik. This is from Maddie, but it is something one would be named by someone else. Sounds like one cannot call themselves a tzaddik, but it is something one would be named by someone else. So I guess so. A person who's walking around and saying, by the way, right here, a tzaddik, he certainly has a long way to go. But there are some, in chapter 10, we actually describe there's many levels of tzaddik, but in general, we categorize it as the complete tzaddik and the incomplete tzaddik. The complete tzaddik is someone who, it's kind of, he was born into it. Like, God just gave a gift to that generation, and that's actually how we worded it in chapter 1. God saw that we need guidance, we need inspiration, we need people that don't get caught up with the realities of world in with the temptations that we have. How many times do we see leaders, and I'm not even talking in the political world because that's not even a comparison. I'm talking about just in our world, people that get caught up and get sidetracked. But Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and I would say the Rebbe are people that they were just an absolute gift to that generation as a shepherd, shepherding with patience, with nurture, with love, and with no judgment. That's Chabad in a nutshell. But Chabad rabbis have their animal souls, but the Rebbe guiding this entire army was like someone that didn't. But so I don't know if they needed to be named or knighted by someone else saying you're a tzaddik. On the contrary, I think they would say, I'm not, that's not me, that's not me. Like, the best example actually is from the Tanya itself. All this is actually, and I was thinking, the Alter Rebbe addressed this all. I would say like Rabbah. The Rabbah, who's the sage we're talking about, he considered himself a Beinoni, but in truth, he was an absolute tzaddik. So that's an example. I don't know if I'm fully answering, but I hope that does something. And it's next to Santa Barbara. It's a beautiful spot. Let me know when you have an opening for a visit and a back house that I could bring some nice vacation there. Okay, so we're going to continue inside. On the contrary, so it would be a very grave error for the Beinoni to let up their guard and say, I'm doing fine. You always have to keep your the pedal to the metal. You have to always keep on trudging forward and never lay back and relax. On the contrary, not only has your animal soul failed to weaken, but with the passing of time, it has actually become stronger because you have made extensive use of it through eating, drinking, and other worldly activities. The animal soul is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Even if all its desires are kosher, the fact that it drives you to eat and enjoy other pleasures daily gives it strength. So if you remember what we learned, it's the idea of compromising, the idea of weakness, that even if it's kosher and therefore it's fine to eat, but do I need this? Is this just a nice chocolate pudding because I have taste buds? And it's not that it's illegal and it's forbidden, it's kosher, and go all out and eat it. But the idea is that tzaddik doesn't even have a want for anything that's about the taste of it. It's all about the energy to keep me glowing in the ways of Torah. Let's just see another comment. So, like the Rebbe, so is the divine soul like a muscle too? No, exactly. Well, hopefully we'll see that soon, because the divine soul is literally a piece of God. Well, it is a muscle in the sense, yes, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. But unlike the animal soul could diminish after time. Maybe like a muscle also, right? The godly soul will always stay there. So yes and no. Yes, it gets stronger the more you use it. But no, it's never going to disintegrate, or I don't know what the word is. God forbid, after a person passes, the muscles are gone over time. Even the bones disappear. But the godly soul, unlike a muscle, godly soul actually comes stronger and stronger. And every time a loved one, a child says Kaddish, or even more, does a mitzvah in memory of their parent or loved one, sibling, spouse, God forbid, or child, whatever it is, they're actually strengthening their neshama of their family member even more. So we see the incredible strength that goes way beyond the muscle. But yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you, Shira, that it's like a muscle in the sense where it strengthens over time with the more use. So in all likelihood, back inside, the Beinani's impression that he is a tzaddik who has eliminated evil from his heart couldn't be further from the truth. Not only has he failed to eliminate his evil, but over time it has grown even stronger. We still haven't yet fully answered the Tanya's second question in chapter 1 on this topic, which the second question was, also, if you consider yourself like a Rasha, a Beinani, you will become sad and depressed, and you won't be able to worship God joyfully and positively. That was a question, that if you look at yourself as a Rasha, you're not properly doing the service. You can't be sad in service of God. You have to be joyful. It's one of the prerequisites of Judaism, right? In Chabad and in our community, on every stationery that we have, our wording we say is experience the warmth of Judaism. Judaism has to be done with passion, with love, with warmth, with excitement, with enthusiasm. If you don't, it's not going to stick. It has to be done joyfully. I just learned in the Talmud recently, and I mentioned this at a Pirkei Avot class a few weeks ago to someone. The Talmud says you're not allowed to pray or study Torah in a state of sadness, in a state of heaviness, in a state of depression. You have to find the joy inside of you. I had a teacher in 4th grade. He was my best teacher in Montreal. He didn't know how to. It says that one of the sages of the Talmud, he would say a joke, and the students would laugh, and it would broaden their minds, open their minds, and then they would be able to study and learn. But I had a teacher who said he wasn't able to say good jokes to broaden our minds, so he would give us a treat every morning. But the point of the treat was to give us the joy and the attachment to wanting to learn and be connected with the teacher. So that's a big part of Judaism. So the question we didn't yet fully answer is, what about the melancholy that will come if you consider yourself like a Rasha? So Shira, about that question, so if you are grieving, no Talmud study. In fact, in terms of Torah law, the week after a person passes, the family members sit what's called Shiva. They're not allowed to learn Torah during the Shiva period. We know that on Tisha B'Av, one day a year, we don't study Torah because Torah gives us joy, and Tisha B'Av is the day that we commemorate the destruction of the temple. We're not joyful. We don't make weddings on that day. So Torah is supposed to be done in a time of joy. But now here's the interesting part, Shira. If a person is not joyful, they should still study Torah, because they need to gain joy, and learning Torah will increase their joy. So meaning study Torah regardless. It's always going to be the rabbi's answer. Study Torah. In fact, in the Talmud it says, if a person has deep desires that are inappropriate, you know where they should run to? It says in the Talmud, they should run to the Torah study hall. In Hebrew, it's called the yeshiva, because if the expression of the Talmud is, if your desire or fantasy is as strong as a stone, it would be shattered by the Torah. And the Talmud quotes a verse that says that which is a verse in the Torah that says, like a hammer breaks through a stone. The Torah is like a strength, a hammer. Like it says, Hashem Oz, God is the strength of the people. So the strength of Torah will shatter the strength of any negative want. Okay, and I thought you said earlier, consider yourself more like a Rasha than a tzaddik. Yes, so like a Rasha. Like a Rasha means a Beinani. Realize that a Beinani never lets his guard down. So never let your guard down. Always consider yourself not a Rasha, like a Rasha. But so we still didn't fully yet answer the question of chapter 1, which was saying, wait a minute, if I'm considering myself like a Rasha, I'm going to become sad and say I can't do anything. So we didn't yet answer the question. Let's see how this paragraph words it. So the thought, I'm in the last 2 lines inside on the Kindle, the thought that after all your inner work, you are still only a Beinani, in whom the deep core of evil remains with its full inborn strength in your left chamber, and it has not budged nor departed from you whatsoever, could be depressing. The Tanya will discuss this concern later on in page 353. So that's exciting because we're only, I think, on page 158 or something. So we've got a ways to go. But it's good. We're doing it together and we'll do it joyfully. So section 3, the tzaddik lookalike. One obvious problem with the above conclusion, we're on if you're looking in the book, it's the bottom of 157, or section 3 in the Kindle is towards the top of this current page. That someone who has achieved self-mastery should never look at himself as a tzaddik, but as a Beinani, is that presumably the person himself knows what is happening inside him. The whole world may err because they judge the person only by his outward behavior and has no information about his deep core. But surely the person knows whether or not he has the urge for self-gratification. So on the outside, people may say you're a tzaddik because you're acting like a tzaddik, right? You're being like a tzaddik because you're not sinning, you're not speaking, and you're not acting inappropriately. So on the outside, you look like a tzaddik. But on the inside, you know if you're tzaddik material or not. You know if you have wants that are for self-gratification, or your only desires for the greater good and for selfless desires. So on the inside, you would know. Right? And just going back to chapter 3 and 4, one of the main things we were discussing there is the inside and the outside. The inside is our soul powers, our divine makeup, 10 divine faculties, cognitive, which are in the mind, and emotional, which are in the heart. But then we have the garments, which are our thought, speech, and action, how we communicate to the world. And that was like the interface, how we are interacting with the world. So even if on the outside, how we interface with the world, we are acting like a tzaddik, but on the inside, I know full well, if I don't have self-gratification, then I'm a tzaddik, right, on the inside. So he addresses this like this. Even the enlightened Beinani, whose urges are temporarily silenced through the residual effects of prayer, will eventually return to his default state when the residue wears off, and he will experience urges once again. So even if you're on a high, you're on that wave, and your house is warm, like the examples we've given in the past, eventually that inspiration will wear down. When you're not in a place of prayer, when the house is cooling off, when the wave is disappeared and you're at the crest. So where do we find the Beinani who experiences no urge for self-gratification and might mistakenly deem himself to be a tzaddik? The Tanya gives us an example that you're not in prayer and still you could mistake yourself to be a tzaddik. Even a person for whom God's Torah is his delight and he studies it day and night, which is a quote from King David in Tehillim, the book of Psalms. So Isabel, I know you're a big fan of Psalms. So this was, you did this one actually quite a while ago because you went through the whole 150 chapters. So this is actually from chapter 1, verse 2. So it's literally the second verse of the entire Psalms. It says, studying Torah day and night. That's what David was doing. And he studies, not only is he studying day and night, he's studying the Torah with sincere devotion for God's sake. Nevertheless, he should not consider himself a tzaddik. So even if someone, then this is actually a really high level. You're studying Torah day and night. And not only are you studying Torah, because a lot of people could be studying, but they're studying because of the prestige that they get from being looked on from the rest of the community as a scholar. So they could sit in the study hall and study day and night, and they're doing it because everyone around them says, wow, that person is a real scholar, or that he'll have answers to questions, or that he'll seem sharp, or quite frankly, a yeshiva boy, they sit in yeshiva to study because their parents pay tuition for them to be there and to study. It's not a negative thing, but to study really with untainted devotion, with no other ulterior motive. Even if you're at that level of studying Torah day and night for the sake of Torah itself, for no other motive, still you shouldn't consider yourself to be a tzaddik. And the reason is, here, let's see on the next page, here we have a new slant to the Beinani experience. Just as the Beinani, immersed in meditative prayer, found himself temporarily devoid of urges, a Torah scholar who devotes himself to study may also find that this mental immersion drowns out its urges. So just like during prayer time, the Beinani feels on a high, during Torah study, the Beinani also feels on a high and feels, wait a minute, I don't have any urges other than God's wants, which is an incredible excitement. But at the same time, don't get ahead of yourself. Realize that it's because you're in prayer, or in this case, because you're in Torah study, that you feel this way. The significant difference here is that unlike prayer, which is usually contained within a limited time period, it is possible to study Torah at every waking hour, day and night. So you could have the phenomenon of a Beinani, whose deep core remains unrefined, but still never feels the urge for self-gratification due to his immersion in Torah study. So the lack of self-gratifying urges for the full-time scholar is no proof whatsoever that the evil has been dislodged from its place in his animal soul. So even if you're studying Torah day and night, it's not a proof that your animal soul disappeared, is destroyed, is void. Rather, it's possible that the deep core of the animal soul remains lodged in the left chamber of the heart, in all its strength and power. It's there, with its full vigor and vitality. And it is only that this person feels refined inwardly because his animal soul's garments of potentially evil thought, speech, and action have no influence over his brain, mouth, and hands, and the other parts of the body, because God has allowed the willpower of the brain to have control and dominance over the emotions of the heart. As we have seen, the principle that the mind rules over the heart applies only when the mind knows exactly what it wants. Ah, interesting. This is a very cool part. When the mind knows exactly what it wants. Let's try to understand that a little bit. So if you remember, in chapter 12, one of the main themes of the chapter was saying that the mind rules over the heart in its very nature. By our nature, the mind controls the heart. What he's saying here is the mind can only control the heart if the mind knows what it wants. So then it can steer the heart in a certain direction. But if the mind doesn't even have a clarity, what is it going to tell the heart? So that changes a little bit of this perspective. Let's see a little more what that means. But let me just look back in the book. Let's see. Does anyone want to volunteer? Let's see. Robin, see you. I don't know if anyone else has the book. And I think the sidebar, again, it looks like it's only in the book. Robin, do you mind saying the sidebar on 158, the practical
Sure.
lesson? It's a short one. Say it slow so everyone could, because most people can't follow along inside. So you'll see at least they'll hear it. Go ahead.
Okay. During and for a while after prayer, or while studying Torah, your Yetzer Hara may be quiet, but it's just fallen asleep. It will wake up again. Okay,
so it will wake up again. Okay, so let's just get back. I'm just going to answer some questions, and we'll finish this section. So David was a Beinani, thinking about Bathsheba and her husband, who was sent to the front lines fighting and died. Maddie, I think you just need a coffee. That would probably solve anything. So the Yetzer Hara, I'm sorry, I should be more in the English. The Yetzer Hara is the evil inclination. It's that animal soul that is triggering impulses inside and getting it out on the surface that gets you to want to have negative wants. So it starts with normal things, but then once you give into those, it just increases and increases until you can find yourself in a place that you don't want to be. So Shira, if I'm not mistaken, by King David, the wording, if we haven't said it yet together, we'll see it soon. David actually, at a certain point of his life, through incredible teshuvah, David attained the level of a tzaddik. So after that story with Bathsheba, he actually spent 25 years. We don't do it this way anymore. And if you remember several chapters ago, I actually made it pretty clear that in our generation, we don't do asceticism. You know, that was actually that was in a Mishnah class in Pirkei Avot. But in our times, the idea of fasting, of course, we still have the important fasts of the year, Yom Kippur, and the other biblical fasts. But fasting, just because it's going to get me closer to God, is not the calling of our generation. Our bodies are not strong like in the olden days that they were able to fast for days at a time. David himself did it that way because that was 3,000 years ago. He was much stronger. So David says these words: "V'libi chalel b'kirbi." My heart is hollow inside of me. What does it mean to have an empty heart? It means he emptied his heart from any evil inclination, from that Yetzer Hara. If you remember, we described in chapter 9 the seat, the stronghold, the fortress of the Yetzer Hara, that evil inclination, is in the left ventricular, or the left part of the heart, the blood part of the heart. David got rid of that through intense fasting and teshuvah over what he did in that story with Bathsheba. And I'm not going to go into the Talmud now, how what he did was justified because the person, Bathsheba's husband, deserved death for rebelling against the king. His name was Uriah. We're not going to go into that whole story, but I get the point of what you're trying to say. And David actually attained the level of tzaddik. He worked hard on getting there, and he attained it. Okay, let's finish this section. When a person, we're on the top, in the Kindle, we're on the top of the page. In the book, we are, I don't know where we are. We're somewhere. Okay, let's see. When a person studies day and night, his constant focus on Torah may empower his mind to overcome his heart on every occasion. But in his deep core, this Beinoni hasn't really changed. He is just managing to maintain enough mental focus to take advantage of a psychological highway between the mind and the heart, which is a special gift from God. Without this tweak, his animal soul, which remains strong, would sometimes seize hold of him. So if not for that constant focus, the animal soul could give way. And if you remember, I think I shared the story before of Reb Mendel Futterfass. He says that this Tanya, this concept of Tanya, saved his life. Reb Mendel, maybe I should pull up on the screen a picture of him, was a giant. He was a Beinoni. He died in 1995. He actually came to Marin before my days, in the 80s. He had a family member who was the Chabad rabbi in San Rafael in the 80s. His name was Rabbi Dolphin. So Reb Mendel was a messenger of the Rebbe, and he would go around to collect funds for important projects of the Rebbe, and he came to Marin. But Reb Mendel spent 12 or 13 years in the gulags, in Siberia camps, labor camps, for the simple crime of being Jewish and for and remaining strong to his Judaism. And he has incredible stories of his time in Siberia, but he never wavered. He was, even though he was around a whole bunch of Russian drunk crooks, people that really perhaps were there for stealing or whatever else, he never got influenced by them. And on the contrary, they would get friendly, and at the end of every hard day of work, they would sit around and everyone would describe memories that they would have. And Reb Mendel always had lessons that he would learn, because everything in life is a lesson for my service, to be a better person, to be closer to God. So he would come up with incredible lessons, and he shared these all after he was released and freed in 1962. He came to New York, and he had many, many close encounters with the Rebbe, and he became a mentor to thousands in the yeshiva in Israel, to the Chabad yeshiva. But anyway, just one point of Reb Mendel. At night, this is Siberia in the winter, they would each have to, they had a shift where they would take turns to spend the night on watch. That was their job. mandated that they have to spend the night watching, standing guard outside. They weren't given any protective gear. They were in their prison suit, pajama, whatever it was. And it was frigid, freezing Siberia nights. You can't survive a night in Siberia outside in the ice and cold and snow without proper gear. And many people died from standing guard. They would freeze. And it was his turn. And he couldn't do it. Like, he was freezing. And the best way, I may have shared the story before, the best way to, nobody try it, but it's a pleasant death. It sounds weird to say, but what I mean by that is, all a person does is go to sleep, and it warms you up, and you fall asleep, and you just don't wake up again. So it's a easy thing to give into and not fight, because it's just the most comfortable place to be is just to go back to sleep in that freezing cold. So Reb Mendel, he couldn't go through the night, and he was fighting with himself to stay awake. He was tired, of course, from the hard day, and he was fighting himself not to go to sleep, which his body wanted to warm up by sleeping. He said, I can't do the night, but I could do 5 minutes. Let me focus for 5 minutes on staying awake, on not giving in, on remaining freezing, and work hard for 5 minutes to stay awake and not give in to my temptation to fall asleep and to die. And he was able to achieve 5 minutes, and he says, let me work on another 5 minutes. And the whole night he survived by working in 5-minute increments. That's a Beinoni. He's not thinking about the whole long process of life, and that's daunting. He's thinking about those 5 minutes. So back to this point over here, studying Torah day and night, he has a stronghold from his mind to his heart, but he knows that the second he leaves it, he doesn't have that same inspiration, and that 5-minute increments become harder and longer to focus on. All right, so let's just wrap up with the last paragraphs and we'll answer questions. Therefore, this Beinoni who studies day and night is able to constantly take advantage of the principle that the mind rules over the heart. The divine soul in his brain dominates the small city and all the parts of his body, so that they all become a garment and vehicle influenced exclusively by the divine soul's 3 garments, namely thought, speech, and action related to the 613 commandments of the Torah. So the mind is able to control the heart because it has it's utilizing the garments of the soul, thought, speech, and action, for Torah and mitzvot, for the 630 commandments of the Torah. Let's take questions. This was hopefully an insightful chapter. We're still not done, but we're making great progress. Let's see. I see there are 3 parts. Part 1 is the book of the in-betweeners, which says the mind rules over the heart. What does they say about having a gut feeling about things? Yes. Or when you feel something in your heart, it makes you want to follow that passion rather than do something because your kind or ego tells you to. I tend to live my life listening to my gut and following my heart. You can speak to this. Oh, can you speak this? Mind, not kind. Got it. It's a great question. It's like your intuition, your gut feeling. And most people tell you, go with the gut, right? Go with your inner feeling, not what people are telling you. I think that's a very good part. You just have to meditate to know what feeling that's coming from, because the point over here is that you're always going to have 2 feelings inside of you. A pull this way and a pull that way. The more you nurture your godly soul, the more that the feeling that's going to be stronger and more voiced. But the gut feeling it could be a very godly neshama like expression, because that's innate. That's what you have. It's already in you. That gut feeling could come from both sides. You just have to really meditate and contemplate, what part of me is it coming from? Is it coming for self motive, for my self-gratification, or if it's coming for the greater good? If it's coming because it's going to do more good and justice and kindness in the world. Yeah, listening to your heart is a good thing, but just you have to listen very closely to hear what part of the heart is coming from the right part of the heart or from the left part of the heart, right? Because remember, we're learning that the Yetzer Hara, that evil inclination, that impulse to for self wants, which is not necessarily bad. It's about yourself, which could lead to very selfish motives and ego and anger and jealousy and all the things that come from there. If it's from the left part of it, you have to listen to it. Listen to that where it's coming from and not give into it. If it's from the right part, you have to go with it. So a lot of times a mentor is there to help you, not tell you what to do, to help tell you what part of your heart is that thought coming from. And if I haven't mentioned it before, Maddie, and this is good for everyone, the Rebbe wanted every single person to have a mentor. It's not a therapist is good, but a mentor is not even someone that you pay for their job, because it's something that the Rebbe wanted mentors to be there to guide not only younger people. The Rebbe wanted, like the Reb Mendel Futterfast that I told you before, with the long white beard that stood outside as a Beinani in Siberia, he had to have a mentor also, because you need an outside perspective on that gut feeling that you have. Where is it coming from? Right or left part of the heart? So a mentorship is more on a spiritual status, guiding you on your journey of Beinani, which is an incredible journey as we're learning together. One step at a time, bit by bit. Thank you, wonderful class. More kindness for the higher, good for all. I remember things like tzitzit and keep your eyes and heart from going astray. Keep mitzvot in mind. Mentorship is very cool. I agree. Awesome. All right, so we'll end class with that. Thank you all for joining on another successful Tanya class. We're making our way through, and hopefully we'll get to that chapter 15 I was telling you about soon. All right, everyone, have a great day. Have a Beinani day. Make it a great day and a good day. All the best. Bye, everyone.